Okay, I'm out of time for me to ask questions. It's good news for all of you because now it's your turn. Please, let's have some excellent questions. As ever, identify yourself and your affiliation. And please remember, this is on the record. We'll take some questions from here, and then we'll, of course, as questions pop up on the Zoom, I'll attend to our online audience as well. Do we have, let's go to the gentleman there. If we can get a microphone. I saw you first, sir. Identify yourself and make it a good question.
I'll do my best. Scott Moore, University of Pennsylvania. I had the honor of serving at the State Department when you were secretary. So pleasure to be here. The question is about subnational action. The first Trump administration, of course, we saw a turn to subnational action as sort of the face of U.S. involvement in multilateral. Gavin Newsom, obviously, was probably the most visible U.S. presence at this COP so far. How do you rate subnational action as a kind of way to maintain continuity or engagement during this period of federal disinvolvement?
Huge.
I'm shocked by this short answer, but I have to, not to say you give long-winded answers. I would never say that publicly. But one more sentence, please, on why it's huge.
Privately, you would, right? No. Well, at the end of Donald Trump's first term, and this is not about Trump, this is about just policy writ large, but at the end of his term, 75% of the electricity produced, the new electricity that came online in America, came from renewables. And one of the reasons for that was governors, Republican and Democrats alike, lived under what's called the Renewable Portfolio Law, which required X amount of deployment of renewables. And they lived by it. And we started a movement. I stood up right here in New York with then Governor Cuomo, Governor Newsom, there was one other governor, Governor Inslee. And we announced the We're Still In movement. And that had a profound impact, folks. So the answer is right now, it's 90% of the new electricity in America. And remember the figures I just gave you. 85% globally of the new electricity is now coming from renewables. I'll tell you, this is a bottom line prediction. This, I do believe, and the Wall Street Journal had this story about 2 months ago. Headline, the energy transition is now unstoppable. Now, there are some people that think that's, I think it absolutely is. The power of the marketplace, the trillions that are now beginning to mass, the commitments, people are going to do this. Why? Because they have to do it. Because you saw what happened to, you saw what happened to Jamaica. You see what happened in California. You see what's happening around the world. There is everything we are doing, those of us advocating for this, does not come out of any ideology, any party, any philosophy. It comes out of physics, science. This is about physics, about, long wave versus short wave, sun sent to the earth and can't get back out because of this film of chemicals.
It's because people see opportunity. That's where you're going with this.
People see more than opportunity. I think people see it as inevitable in every respect. It's the way they're going to preserve their habitats, the way they're going to stay alive, it's the way they pass something on to their kids.
I'll do the journal one better. They might say the transition is unstoppable. I'd say the age of big climate is over. The action is going to come from the bottom up, and including in resilience. Let's go to this gentleman for a question in the front row. And we'll see if we have any.
Thank you, Secretary Kerry. Great to see you. My name is Jay Coe. I'm from the Lightsmith Group. We focus on adaptation and investing. And one of the big initiatives that came out of the Biden administration was the Prepare strategy. And broadly, that's one of the achievements, I think, of the Paris activity, which is to focus also on adaptation and resilience. It feels like adaptation and resilience is finally having a moment, not just on the risk and downside, but also investors beginning to look at this. McKinsey, BCG, Bain, all describing this as a trillions of dollars potential investment area. It has the kind of dollars and cents discussion that you're talking about here as a theme. And I'm just wondering if you can comment on what you think the opportunity is for adaptation and resilience as part of the climate tech story and the investment opportunity story.
I think adaptation is up there equally with resilience and with mitigation. And that's the way we're going to make it work. And bottom line is, if there's a revenue stream attached to whatever the project or enterprise is, you can fund it, and it can happen, and you can make money. If you don't have money, it's tougher. The bottom line is that, but we're not doing anything that's concessionary. We're not doing anything that's subsidized, for the simple reason we want to prove to people that on the basics of economics, the basic of a judgment about a deal, you can have a terrific outline source. And let me tell you just quickly a couple of things. We're invested in a company called Fervo. Some of you may have heard of it, I don't know. It's geothermal. They built a prototype, not a prototype, they built a pilot project in Utah, in Nevada, and now the prototype is being built in Utah. And they'll be producing electricity shortly, in a year or so. It's 100%, it comes out of the earth. There's a certain amount of, 85% of the employees are employees who came out of oil and gas, extraction industry. And they're using techniques that were used for fracking to now be able to get the heat out of the earth at levels, and they're going down 10,000 feet. They're going down 5,000, drilling horizontally. And this is going to be, that's a way you have absolute emission-free production of an AI data center. So,
Secretary Kerry, I have to thank you because you've perfectly teed up a promotion for a major package that The Economist is publishing tomorrow on next generation geothermal, for which I went out to Utah to that. He didn't know this, to the Fervo project that's being discussed.
See, it's happening, folks.
It's happening, folks.
Happen.
If The Economist says it's happening, it's happening. You can see it all tomorrow.
Liar.
It's really an extraordinary transformation and an example of American climate leadership. It really is American leadership.
It is.
With startup companies and sort of the best of risk capital meeting oil and gas. This is green fracking. Some people aren't going to like it. New York State, we don't love fracking, but we're going to fall behind if we don't follow the opportunity of extending a kind of green energy that's got three benefits. It's clean emissions, but it's also 24/7 firm power, as it's called, and you can even use it for energy storage, long duration. So I encourage you to check
This is why
the
we're going
package
to
out.
win.
But
I'm not kidding,
this
folks.
point is well
taken. This is why I
taken.
believe we can win.
Let's go to our questioner online.
We will take our next question from Anatoly Chubais.
Oh, all right then.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm Anatoly Chubais. My current position is chairman of the Russian Study Center in Tel Aviv University, but my previous job was the Russian President's Special Envoy on Climate and Sustainability. And I do remember, Mr. Kerry, your successful visit to Russia in 2021, which really helps Russia to focus its climate policy. But that was 4 years ago. A lot have happened since that time. And if we will look from today's position, I understand that you are separating the America and the American administration. But anyway, as we know, the President Trump officially withdrew the United States from the Paris Agreement, and he called the Paris Agreement unfair, draconian, bad deal for America. And if we go to Russia, unfortunately, I must admit that there is no real climate policy.
We're honored to have you with us, but your question, please.
Yeah, so my question, with this position of United States, which is number 2 global emitter, and Russia, which is number 4 global emitter, do you believe that it will not undermine the global sustainable policy and still have a chance to achieve zero emission by 2050?
I'm not sure I understand the Russia part of that question, but maybe it isn't there. I think that I think first of all, I mean, Russia is way behind everybody else and has barely taken part, unfortunately, in the efforts to create alternative renewable energy sources and to move away from gas and so forth. And obviously, what's happening with the war in Ukraine is a environmental disaster of huge proportions. So I think I would welcome Russia, trying to come to the table on several of these issues. I spent a lot of time with President Putin and more than anybody else in the Obama administration, long meetings, and we were obviously very focused on Syria and ISIS and other things. But Russia cooperated with us in getting chemical weapons out of Syria in the middle of a war. And Russia played a very big role in doing that cooperation. So I'm somebody who believes good diplomacy can result in conversations even when things are tough. And I would love to see us engage in more robust efforts with Russia on a broader array of issues, including the Southern Ocean, where we want to try to create a massive addition to the largest marine protected area in the world, the Ross Sea, and Russia is unfortunately opposing it. So I would hope you would do anything you can to open up the door for real dialogue here in the way that we had it very recently and very productively. We stopped Ebola in its tracks in West Africa. Russia helped, China helped. So I am a deep believer in the power and possibility of good diplomacy to change the way you currently see things. And so I don't look at it and say, well, the way it is today is the way it has to be and it's going to be. That's not true. And if you engage where you don't think there's necessarily a possibility, but you have a good idea of how you can build trust and how you can do things that are constructive for both or multiple countries, you can make things happen. And I hope you would be part of efforts in Russia to get people to remember that.
Thank you. Let's go to a question here. There's a lady there.
Hi, thank you so much for this conversation. My name is Swati and I work with UNICEF. So my question is very health and climate centric. The two don't always align. So I wanted to get your thoughts more on what good transition plans actually look like. We know right now that about 500,000 newborns die every year, and it's attributable to household pollution. That's biomass fuels being burned in low and middle income countries. And for them, the next feasible step in the energy ladder often is LPG. And so I feel like I don't really hear a lot of that conversation or nuance at COPs, where a lot of these countries desperately need to move away from biomass, from wood, from coal, but often maybe are being held to the standards of these Western countries that make up the top 20 of this innovation index,
Sure.
but don't have the same resources.
So let me be very, very blunt with you and with myself. I'm not a fan of talk fests. And from Paris through Dubai, we didn't just produce talk fests. We produced a roadmap. We produced an agreed upon agenda. And people aren't following it. I mean, if they're not following it, you have to find a way to pressure and bring people around. But we don't have any credibility in that field anymore. We're not in it. We're not even at the table. And we have no credibility with which to say to them, well, if you don't do this, we're going to try to push a countervailing, CBAM measure. Familiar with CBAM, with the, countervailing carbon-based surcharges on people. And Europe's thinking about deploying one now. China has a marketplace for carbon. California has a marketplace for carbon. The biggest and best thing we could do to win this battle, actually, is pass an agreed upon real price of carbon globally. The minute you do that, marketplace changes over. It's gone. We're going to win. I say that because I led the fight to do acid rain back in the 1980s when I was lieutenant governor and then when I was a senator. And we won the fight. You don't hear about acid rain. Why? Because it went away as a problem, because sulfur was priced, there was a trading mechanism, and it won the day. So if we could get something like that cooking, we'd have a chance of, again, winning the battle.
And back in the day, it was a Republican president who signed it into law. It was a market-based mechanism.
It was a market-based mechanism, which was designed, frankly, by the Heritage Foundation. And we kind of borrowed with them and worked with them. And I had Governor John Sununu of New Hampshire was my, Republican counterpart, and Dick Celeste from Ohio. And we put together this solution, which ultimately I helped get into the Clean Air Act when I was in the Senate. So things make a difference. You have to talk to each other to make those things happen. You have to go across borders, state lines, country lines, whatever. You got to have deployment, but you got to have real things that are happening now. And right now, what burns me up more than anything is people are not conscientiously making the kind of efforts. There are a few people who are, don't get me wrong. mostly European countries. And the Europeans are leading on the index that I just mentioned. So you have to keep pounding away. Folks, you know what? Winston Churchill once was asked something about America, whether they'd come around to do the war, fight the war, help and everything. And he said confidently, he said, America will do the right thing after they've exhausted every other option.
We're working on the latter part right now. Let's go for a question here. This gentleman.
Tyler Godoff, Emerging Founder Advisory. So you mentioned you're now 55 years old. You've been on this journey for a while now. With hindsight, knowing what you know now, how would you have changed your strategy trying to achieve the goals that you've achieved and are trying to achieve on this front?
How would I have changed?
Yeah, knowing what you know now, what strategy shifts would you have personally made?
Well, I would have shifted some strategy and made sure that my campaign was adequately answering the lies that were thrown at us and won the presidency. That would be a good start.
Let's go to the back row here. I've ignored the back. Maybe we'll go to the lady over there in the red.
Thank you very much. My name is Lily Pike. I'm a reporter with Bloomberg News. I cover climate change in China, and thank you for citing my colleague's work earlier. My question is going back to what you said about China filling the vacuum right now. I'm curious, is China currently meeting your definition of climate leadership on the global stage? And if not, why not?
No, they're not. And I don't think they will in the near term very easily. For the same reasons that I think Belt and Road has been a very troubled program. I think that I'm trying to find the right structure here. China is different. It's just different culturally, economically, and otherwise. They make a decision, everybody gets on board. They can make it in 2 days. They can make it in 1 day if they want to, and they move. We can't do that. We don't do that. And I'm not advocating that we should do that because the methodologies that they're doing that are not something that Americans want to live with, and I would never even think of that. It'd be counter to America. But they get things done. 8 years ago, they were nowhere near being able to produce the kind of massive levels of solar panels that they are today. And mind you, also, those solar panels capacity came from Germany and the United States. It was literally stolen from us in the context of trade, and nobody did anything about it at the WTO, and the rest is history. So we lose out. Now, we can't sit around and crying about it and whining. We got to get to work. And the way we get to work is focus on the supply chains that are going to make the greatest difference to us right now, to be able to lead, and frankly, to sit down with China. Now, I know that's heresy in a lot of places. Everybody says, oh, no. I mean, Congress people are tripping over each other to see who can be more, bellicose in talking about China. But I just don't agree with that as an approach. And I think everything I've done with China has proven otherwise. That is not the only way to get things done. And we might find that there's a very different course of possibilities if we were to work in a sincere way of dealing with other things. Now that's, mind you, there are a bunch of things that are problematic in terms of how China behaves. I mean, you've got challenges galore, ranging from access to the marketplace, theft of intellectual property, Uyghurs, Taiwan, nuclear weapons, 9-dash line in the South China Sea.
It's going to be hard to climb out of that hole to be optimistic, Secretary Kerry.
No, I disagree, because that's the way life is, folks. I mean, there's nothing we're presented with today that hasn't been presented in a slightly different form to another generation. Every one of the problems we face are caused by human beings, and they're caused by human beings and how they interpret other people's politics, other people's strategy, and other people's culture, and so forth. And you get stuck there. And I think, the art is to sort of find the way you can get commonality and break out of there. I'll give you a commonality suggestion. If we just have a race with China for AI, what Putin said is that whoever controls AI is going to be able to control the world. That's Putin's view. And Xi has not said something like that, but he said that China is going to lead the world in AI. Now, I don't know how many of you read Tom Friedman's article in the New York Times maybe 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago. Brilliant article, in my judgment. Really crafted carefully, word for word, important, a huge message. And the bottom line was, if we don't sit down with China and work out the guardrails and the rules of the road for AI, we are all asking for potential cataclysmic disaster. We lived through this in the post-war world, post-World War II. And we had a constant struggle with the Soviet Union on who was going to develop the next weapon. And if you looked at the history, and it's worth going back and tracking it, you look at the history of the arms race, beginning with us dropping an atomic bomb. I'm not saying we shouldn't have. I think it was the right thing to do, and I support that. But we did it. Then came the hydrogen. Then came, I think...
We're just out of time. So the punchline here is, what I hear you bringing us to is, while you emphasize that there is a great competition, a great race, it is, of course, useful to remember the value of cooperation as well on the great powers, on the great teams of our age.
But there's some things that's a little more than, it's not just the power of cooperation, it's the imperative in this case.
Right.
Imperative.
Imperative.
And how do we get to that imperative?
Thank you. We are out of time, and I will draw this meeting to a close, reminding all of us that this was on the record. I thank all of you for joining us online as well as here. This will be posted online. Please give Secretary Kerry a nice round of applause for joining us.